Well, we want to take some of your questions for Pat. Pat, this is from Ben, who says, if the rapture happens after the 7-year tribulation, how do we know when the tribulation begins?
How would you know if an earthquake just hit?
Yeah, it'll be that significant.
If an asteroid hits the Earth, trust me, you'll know. The sun will be darkened. The moon won't give its light. People will be dying of starvation. It'll be hideous. You'll know if stuff like this happens. I mean, you know.
Be very evident.
So the thing I wanted to stress with people is not to spend time on the times and the seasons, but to say, how do we occupy till Jesus comes back again? That's the answer. We work as hard as I can to lead people to the Lord. All right, next question.
Yeah, this is Leah, who says, during the end times, what about the temple in Israel that's supposed to be built? When does that come in with all these things that are happening?
Well, I wrote a book called The End of the Age. It had all this figured out, and it's in there that somewhere after this asteroid hits, in my book, the earth is in chaos, and it was then time for a dictator to arise and take over, and that's supposedly the temple would be rebuilt, and he would proclaim that he's God. I mean, that would, so it could happen during that period of time. An Antichrist could come forth. But again, you read Revelation, and I want to caution people about Revelation. It is a symbolic book, and it may well be talking about the Roman Empire, and it may also be talking about the fall of Jerusalem and the Jews, and is focused on Israel and Rome. And
sometimes it all is mixed together.
It's mixed together, but it doesn't necessarily say Washington or New York. So, I mean, I just, when you read it, keep in mind that's the kind of book it is. And it is a type of, they call it apocryphal literature about things like this. So, you know, it's there, but it's in types and shadows. What I like is the clear stuff in the gospel where Jesus said, this is what's going to happen. And that's what my teaching is about. All right, what's next?
This is Helen, who says, can you explain what New Jerusalem is?
Well, the idea is that there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth. A new Jerusalem is going to come down out of heaven like a bride adorned for her husband. Read the last few chapters of Revelation. And the idea is that this is the holy city, New Jerusalem, where God dwells, where you don't need the light of the sun because the light of the Lord is going to illuminate it, and where the nations of the earth will walk in the joy of the Lord. And I mean, that's what it is. Read Revelation, the last few chapters.
Well, Bob says, I've been watching your series on the end times, and it sounds like you believe in dominion theology. Are you a dominionist, or do you believe Jesus is bringing in the kingdom?
What in heaven's name is a dominionist? Whatever it is, I don't think I'm one of them.
I think you'd know if you were, perhaps.
The Bible says, if you read carefully, the Bible tells mankind that you will have dominion. Let them have dominion over the earth, over the fish of the sea, the fowls of the air. God gave mankind the rule over the earth. But, of course, Jesus is the Lord. He has the rule, and then the Bible says that the end time, after he's put everything under his feet, then he's going to turn it over to God the Father. That's what Paul said. So
what do you think dominionist is a belief that we bring in the end times by our actions or something?
No way.
Interesting.
Nor have I ever said anything that would give that person that idea. What?
This is Chris, who says, according to Matthew 24:14, the end will come when the gospel is preached in all the world. As the head of the largest Christian broadcasting network, do you know of any places on earth that haven't heard the gospel?
If there are, they're tiny little tribes off in the jungles of the Amazon or someplace like that. They're very few.
Satellite dishes really changed that,
didn't they? Dear me, yes. I mean, for example, the Kabyle Berber, they were left sort of unattended, and we've been broadcasting to the Kabyle Berber in their language. So there are few, if any, regions of the earth that haven't been. But, you know, the New Tribes Mission goes out to bring languages and translations to tiny little groups like Papua New Guinea and places like that. So there may be a few, but precious few, on the earth that haven't heard the gospel.
Mark says, what are your theories on the Illuminati, the Bilderbergs, or the Club of Rome? Is there some truth that they will have something to do with the New World Order?
Well, this Illuminati was, you know, during the time of the French Revolution, there were people who had been affected by Egyptian mythology, and they were sort of a secret society, And they used the term the New World Order. I wrote a book, The New World Order, which was a big bestseller. And up to that time, President George Bush was talking about the New World Order. After my book, he stopped talking about it because this was a key phrase for these satanic groups like the Illuminati. But again, we can get so hung up on looking for spooks and spies and evil plots that I think we'll get carried away. I laid it all out in my book, The New World Order, but again, I'm looking to Jesus, and I think our total focus as Christians ought to be getting the gospel out before the Lord comes back. And if he comes back 1,000 years from now, we'll be doing our job. Occupy till I come. All right?
This is Mari or Mary, who says, at the end of the times, the devil will be released from his chains and stir up trouble. Why would God allow that?
You know, I really don't know. I mean, you've got 1,000 years of peace under the benevolent leadership of Jesus Christ, where people are living in bliss and joy, but they were doing that in the Garden of Eden. And yet, God allowed Satan to come into the Garden of Eden and tempt Adam and Eve away from him. So it just shows how gullible people are, and he's going to give them one last chance to say no to Satan. But at that time, Satan will be seized by the angels. He will be bound by a chain, put in the lake of fire, where he will be tormented forever and ever and ever. That's what the Bible says. But that's Revelation, and again, it's a book of shadows. Just keep in mind, it's not as clear in the Gospels and in the letters of Paul as it is here in Revelation. Right?
This is an interesting one. Sherry says, I am a hairstylist. I believe one of the signs of the end times is family against family, and I see that in my clients. It's painful. Do I pray for this strife to end or for it to continue, since it is his will?
Heavens no. Blessed are the peacemakers. Do everything you can to bring peace in families. But that's exactly what the Bible says. A man will be set against his wife, his children, the daughter-in-law against the mother-in-law. I mean, it'll happen.
Betrayal, sort of.
Betrayal. But it was encouraged by the Nazis, encouraged by the communists. And yes, we see it in our society, but it's the flesh wants its way, and it rebels against any kind of authority. But do everything you can to bring peace. All right?
Here's another interesting one. Pat MC says, with the end times nearing and so much persecution and devastation to come, is it wrong for Christians to bring children into this world?
You know, about 50 years ago, I thought the same thing as my wife and I were expecting the birth of our 4th child. And I thought, how can I bring this child into the world, as evil as it is? Well, my dear daughter has grown up. She has 3 lovely children. She's a prayer warrior and a wonderful Christian, and she survived. So the Lord was with me, with her, and will be with you and your children. So don't stop your activities to say, well, I'm not going to have kids because of. You never know what time and the times and the seasons. They're reserved for the Father. So the big thing he tells us to do is occupy till I come. Don't be spending your time speculating. Don't speculate on all this stuff. You know, old wives' tales, et cetera, but let's focus in on the most important thing, which is living for Jesus, living according to his word, living in love with each other, and taking the gospel to the world. All right?
Well, that's all the time we have for your questions today. It's obvious many of you have an interest in this, and so we encourage you to go to cbn.com if you'd like to see the other features this week, and we'll have more tomorrow.